All right. Hey, everybody. It's Dan Kraus. We're going to be starting in about 2 or 3 minutes. It's just 10:58 by my clock here. Just wanted to let everybody know we're going to be doing talk about planning for Medicaid. Focus on Wisconsin. If you're not in Wisconsin, that's okay, but the rules may be different where you are. I am just going to turn off my camera here for a minute and just finish getting ready, but we will get started here soon. I would appreciate if somebody can just let me know if you can hear me. I think everything's working okay, but if you could just say hello or pop up in the chat, I would really appreciate that. Hopefully people can hear. I just got a message that somebody couldn't hear, probably because I wasn't talking. We're not yet started. We'll start in a few seconds. Okay, let's get started. So, Darlene, if you still can't hear, just let somebody know. Maybe something's not working right, but I think most people can hear anyway. Um, all right, there you should be able to see me, and there's also a slide. So if you can't see both of us, or if you can't see me or the slides, maybe scroll down on your device. You should be able to see both. There's also a chat function that you can see what other people are writing there, and you can write things in there. That's a good place. That's probably the only place that you can ask questions. Laura is here as well, Laura Hamden, and she will be tagging questions for me to answer at the end. And there will also be some links for scheduling a consultation if you want to use that. There will be some links, I believe, for other documents that you can download, things that you can answer to help us understand what your concerns are, little quizzes or pop-up things to answer. Okay, so to get started, my name is Dan Kraus. I am an estate planning and elder law attorney. I practice in Wisconsin. I'm also licensed in Illinois and Minnesota, though I don't really practice in those two states very often. We are going to be talking about Medicaid, and this is a program that will pay for long-term care like nursing care or assisted living care. And that's why it's really important to know about that because assisted living care and nursing care can be very expensive, and Medicaid can help pay for that. So, good. That's all the housekeeping I think we need to go through. And let's get on with the program. So once again, my name's Dan Kraus. I've got a lot of experience with estate planning. I've also been in the military. I was a JAG attorney in the military. As you can see, if you're looking at the slides, I'm wearing my BCG glasses or BCGs in the lower picture there. Before I was retired from the military. BCGs are, of course, birth control glasses. The Army gives you glasses, and nobody would date you while you're wearing them. That's why we call them BCGs. One of 7 estate planning law specialists in the state of Wisconsin. There are many more estate planning law specialists in other states, but there are not that many in Wisconsin. Proud to be among those. Also, I have written a book. It's called Estate Planning in Wisconsin. Came out in 2017. We're due for an update that should be coming out next year. We'll add more about the elder planning and the Medicaid planning. I want to add another chapter, maybe 2 chapters on that. If you're interested in the book, you can look it up. It's on Amazon. You can purchase it there. Myself and my law firm, Kraus Estate Planning and Elder Law Center, we are members of several organizations and have several kudos. We focus on estate planning. We don't do divorces. We don't do bankruptcies. We don't do anything except for estate planning, elder law, and estate administration, which means after somebody dies, we help people to pick up the pieces and do all the legally necessary things. So let's talk about long-term care. Long-term care is care that is given to a person that is not necessarily care that's going to help them get better, but it's a care that's going to help them be more comfortable, more healthy for longer, to help them live a more comfortable, healthy life, but not necessarily get better. If you reach the age of 65 these days in the United States, the chances are about 1 in 2, a little greater than 50-50, that you will have to spend some time in a long-term care facility. Now, some time could be a month, it could be a year, it could be several years. None of us would like the idea of spending time in a long-term care facility, but unfortunately, it's a fact of life these days. Some of the dangers of getting older and some of the dangers of things that can land us in long-term care facilities is the top of the list is Alzheimer's disease. While a lot of the other causes of death in the United States have been going down, like cancer, deaths, etc., Alzheimer's disease keeps climbing and climbing. It causes more deaths than it did a few years back, and even more than it did several years back. There's other types of dementia. I guess I misspelled Lewy body dementia. I didn't put the A on the end there. There's vascular dementia, Parkinson's disease. There's just arthritis that helps or causes many people to go into long-term care, and just general feebleness of old age or difficulty breathing, COPD, where people need more help and care. So what's the cost of long-term care? Well, it depends on exactly what you need, but some general ideas are if you need home health aides and you want 24/7 care, it's going to be up over $260,000 because you're going to need to pay people around the clock to make sure that you're okay and to tend to your needs. If you're in an assisted living facility, it's kind of like an apartment where they check in on you every now and then. That can be $60,000 or more per year, typically a bit more than that, but not always. Nursing home care, about $156,000 a year, depending on the facility and where you are in the country. But that's about $13,000, probably closer to $14,000 now per month. And costs go up, of course. So who pays for that cost? Well, it's not Medicare. Medicare will not pay for long-term care. Now, it is true that Medicare will pay for some stay in a nursing facility, but only if it's for a recovery. meaning that somebody fell and they need to mend their bones and they're going to recover and then they're going to leave. If it becomes long-term care, Medicaid or Medicare will not pay for that. Your health insurance will not pay for long-term care stay. Normal health insurance will not pay for long-term care, neither will Medicare. So long-term care insurance, if you have a separate policy specially created to pay for long-term care, then that will help you pay for long-term care. Those don't always pay for all of the costs. In fact, most of them don't pay for all of the costs. They only pay for part of the cost, and then you still have to chip in. They'll have a daily maximum. Sometimes it's $100 a day, sometimes $200. But even if it's $300 a day, that's not going to cover the entire cost of a nursing facility. VA pension, non-service connected VA pension can also pay for long-term care, but it's maxed out at about $31,000 a year, which will not pay for certainly all of your long-term care. Medicaid. This is what we're mostly going to be talking about today. Medicaid pays for a lot of long-term care. In fact, they pay for half of the nursing care in this country. And finally, and not the one that we want, out of pocket. So, but the bottom line for most people is you pay until you go broke, and then Medicaid pays. It's not a great system. It's not a great idea about going broke, paying for long-term care at the end of your life, but it does happen to so many people. Some people say, well, is it okay to do this type of planning so that we can take advantage of Medicaid? Shouldn't people just have to spend everything on their own care? Obviously, since it is just their care, shouldn't they have to pay? Well, I don't believe that's true. And the families that I work for don't believe that's true. They believe that they should be able to keep as much as they can for their family and take advantage of every program that is available to them. And one of the reasons that I'm happy to help them with that is because there is a system in this country, a system of discrimination. Now, there's discriminations in many areas. The discrimination that I'm talking about is discrimination according to the disease that you might happen to have when you're older. It's not discrimination according to color, race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, any of that stuff. It's discrimination based on disease. So the basic inequality in the healthcare system has to do with the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is a program that anyone who's 65 and older and has paid in to the system during their working years gets take advantage of Medicare. You've earned it, you paid for it. It takes care of most of your health care needs. It's part of the Social Security system. You do have to chip in for it every month, but it's fairly minimum. And you also get to pay for another, like a Medicare supplement insurance that will pay anything that Medicare doesn't pay. So Medicare, though, only takes care of outpatient and inpatient care. So what does that mean? If you're in the hospital, they will pay. If you're at your home getting better, they will pay for your treatments, etc. But if what you've got is a need for long-term care, Medicare stops paying. It won't pay. Then you have to go to a program called Medicaid. Medicaid is a means-based program, and that means you have to go broke before you can afford it. So Medicare is earned through the Social Security system. Even billionaires can take advantage of Medicaid. They go to the hospital, they go to their doctor. Medicare will pay on their behalf. They don't have to be broke. However, Medicaid is a needs-based program, which means you really can't access the benefits of Medicaid unless you're broke. So we'll talk about what broke means exactly soon. However, I want to go back to the discrimination. So if you have certain diseases and the treatment for certain diseases on the left-hand side of this chart here, cancer, heart transplant, bypass surgery, dialysis, stroke. Those are all cared for in the hospital or in outpatient setting. So you go to visit the doctor, you get some treatment, and then you go home. However, on the right-hand side, we have diseases that are cared for through nursing care. That people don't recover necessarily from them. They just need help in everyday life, and that's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, COPD, debilitating arthritis, and maybe post-stroke disabilities, where somebody is not going to get better and they just need help throughout the rest of their life. So how's the discrimination work? Well, if you get the disease on the left-hand side of this page, you are financially lucky. Now, I wouldn't really say anybody that gets cancer is lucky, but compared to somebody who gets Alzheimer's disease, financially they're very lucky because cancer care will be paid for through Medicare and your insurance supplement. Medicaid will not pay for any Alzheimer's treatment, long-term care, until you go broke. So the ones on the left are lucky because they don't have to go broke. The ones on the right are unlucky because they go broke. Unfortunately, none of us can really choose the diseases that we may happen to have when we're older. And so we've got discrimination. So what happens if you do end up with one of those diseases or maladies that causes you to need long-term care? Well, there's two parts of the Medicaid qualification process, and then afterwards, the second part is after you've passed away. So the first part is before you can access Medicaid, you have to become financially eligible, and that's called the spend down. So if you start incurring these monthly expenses for nursing care, etc., you're in a spend down situation. Unless you're very lucky and you have enough income coming in, $13,000 or more per month to pay for your long-term care, then, like most people, you are going to be spending down your assets. So the government's plan is you just spend down and spend down and spend everything until you have nothing left except for $2,000, no more. You can keep your home in the spend down situation as long as you intend to return to the home at some point. So if you go into a nursing home, you have to intend to return back to your home, and then you can keep it without the government making you sell it to pay for your care. You can have one car. I don't know if people can hear, but I've got fire trucks going by with their sirens going on. It's a little distracting. So you can keep one car. Even if it's a couple, you can only keep one car. The other one is countable as part of your $2,000. And you can have burial insurance. You're also allowed to keep all of your household goods and furnishings and all of that. The government doesn't really care that much about that. So people say, well, the spend down doesn't sound too bad because my major asset is my home. And if I'm allowed to keep the home, well, I'm not all that worried about it. The problem is the second part after you've passed away is this estate recovery, where the state comes in and they take the home. If you've been on Medicaid, they keep a tab. Medicaid keeps a tab. Everything that you get from Medicaid, whether it's prescription medications, whether it's nursing care, monthly cost of nursing care, whether it's nursing care at home, etc., they just keep a tab. After you've passed away, they present the tab and they put a lien on your house if you have a house left. If there's nothing left, they can't collect from your kids, so there's no worries there. But essentially, it can take the house after you're gone. So even though you're allowed to keep it during your lifetime, in Wisconsin, not so much after you've gone. So giving the house to your kids, not really an option if you use the government's plan. So we've talked about the cost of nursing care. Long-term care insurance only really pays for part of nursing care unless you've got a really, really good policy, which I don't think I've seen a policy that will pay for 100% guaranteed. They have monthly or daily limits there. And The really unfortunate part about this is you can't get this type of insurance on the marketplace. There's no guarantee that you can qualify for insurance like you can for health insurance. You have to go to the insurance agent. You have to take a test. They look through your medical records. The nurse comes out, takes your blood pressure. You answer questions about, have you ever had this or that or the other disease? And just in case you've had any health issues, you're probably not going to be able to get long-term care insurance. Also, if you're old enough, then they'll tell you, well, it's going to be very, very costly, or you're too old, we can't insure you. So if you are concerned about long-term care insurance and you're under 50, maybe 60 years old, you should really look into it. In fact, I think everybody should look into it and just see, is this a good option for me? Many people come away and say, no, that's too expensive. I can't afford that. So go back to the government's plan. This is an example. We'll say this is Dad's example. So Dad has a $300,000 saved up for his retirement, and he's got a home. Let's just say the home is worth also $300,000. So Dad essentially starts with $600,000, but he needs nursing care. So what happens is he spends all $300,000 on nursing care over a few years, and then he goes on Medicaid. He lives a few more years and then dies. Now, the house is recovered because of the amounts that Medicaid spent are recovered against the house. So let's just say he lived long enough, and now the entire house is taken to repay the Medicaid bill. So in the end, Dad's got no security after he spent down everything. When you've got $0 in your bank account, you've really got zero security. You don't have a lot of choices. If you're simply on Medicaid and you have no other way to pay for anything that you want, it's really a sad situation. If you don't have anything put aside because the government won't let you keep anything, you're completely reliant on the government, and that is a bad situation. So this, I want to make it clear, this does not have to be you. This is the government's plan. You can have your own plan. So elder law, which is part of what I practice here, is focused on knowing the rules, specifically knowing the rules for Medicaid, for qualifying for Medicaid. What's an income? What's an asset? What's countable? What's not countable? What age do you have to be to qualify? What kind of disabilities do you need? Where are the proper facilities? How much do they cost? Do they take Medicaid? Do they not take Medicaid as payment? So there are ways to save your assets if you know the rules, or if you know somebody who knows the rules. The smart plan, and what your plan should be, is to keep your house, your business, your farm for your kids. Put that aside so that they can inherit from you, and also put those assets aside so you have security. If you do need Medicaid, if you do need long-term care in the future, you want your family to be able to have this set aside asset so that if you need something, or if you want to move, if you want anything, so that you have security and not just day to day, month to month, having nothing, then you can set aside assets and then use Medicaid to pay for your care. One of the Medicaid concepts that people need to know about is the divestment concept. Essentially, it's giving property away. Now, a lot of people get this. It's like, do we want to pay for all of our long-term care, or do we want to try to give something to our kids now, or set something aside so that our kids can have something later? People naturally say, well, let's give stuff to the kids. The problem with that is you can't give anything away within 5 years of applying for Medicaid without ending up with a penalty by the state. So some people ask me, well, what about the 15,000, or it's actually 18,000 this year that you can give? Can you just give that away and then it's not counted? The answer is no, you cannot give it away. Those $18,000 that you're allowed to give away have to do with the gift tax. Does nothing to do with Medicaid. It's different rules. So if you give that $18,000 to each of your kids, it's going to cause you a penalty under the Medicaid rules. Now, there are some gifting that is allowed. A gift to your spouse is allowed, but also all of their assets are also counted as your assets with some exceptions. So it doesn't really help to give to your spouse in most situations without knowing the rules. You can also give to a disabled child or to a special needs trust, a special type of special needs trust called a pooled trust. Giving to a pooled trust, though, means that if there is anything left in that pooled trust account after you die, instead of going to your family, it will go to repay Medicaid for your care. Many people use gifts to trust. Now, the gift to a trust is still a divestment. However, it's a smarter divestment than just a gift to the kids because it allows you to take advantage of some really important tax rules and save tens of thousands of dollars to your kids in taxes when they go to sell your house or to sell the property that you've given them. If you use a trust and it's done properly, you won't have to pay, or your kids won't have to pay any capital gains tax on the gains that you realized in your home. If you just give the home to the kids directly, they will end up with a several tens of thousands of dollars worth of capital gains tax when they go to sell it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about pre-planning. If you want to do a plan that's not the government's plan, kudos to you. Congratulations. That's a great idea. So let's talk about Dad's case again. He's got a $300,000 nest egg and a $300,000 house. What does he do? Well, while he's still healthy, so maybe in his 60s or so, doesn't see the nursing home in his future yet, he executes a plan, a pre-plan, where he takes a lot of his assets. In this case, he's very aggressive in planning because he wants to save as much as he can. He takes $225,000 of that $300,000 and puts it in an MAPT. The MAPT stands for Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. This is an irrevocable trust that we use to hold assets for people who are going on Medicaid or might go on Medicaid. And what they do is you put it in this trust. The trust is controlled by your children, people that you trust. You really have to be able to trust them because you're going to rely on them in order to take the assets out if you need them later. So he puts $225,000 plus the house in this MAPT, and then he goes on about his life. He keeps $75,000 out so that he has enough money to go on vacation or put a new roof on the house or get a new motorcycle, whatever he needs to do. He's got $75,000. And then if he needs more, the kids can give it to him from out of the trust. But that $75,000 is not protected. That's why he's being kind of cautious to keep enough out that he can live day to day. But he's also being aggressive in putting most of his life savings in this MAPT. Then, after 5 years, the assets have been in this MAPT. Now the state cannot be concerned about them anymore. Dad needs to go into a nursing home. So what happens is Dad goes in the nursing home. The $75,000 follows him, and he pays for his care until he runs out of that. Now we've got the $225,000 plus the house in the MAPT. They don't count, but Dad's family now has control of those assets, and they can use them for Dad if he needs them. Dad then goes on Medicaid after running through his $75,000, lives happily in the nursing home for a while, and then passes away. Estate recovery cannot happen against this trust. So the state cannot put a lien on the house. The state can't take any of that $225,000. So whatever's left in that goes to the children. Let's just say Dad didn't need anything out of that money. Maybe it grew. Maybe he needed something out of there, but it was used as part of the interest or dividends or income that they made from that $225,000 while it was in there. So in the end, the house plus $225,000 goes to the family. They don't have any capital gains tax. They don't have any inheritance tax on that. So dad now has saved $525,000 by pre-planning. Now, sometimes there's not enough time to do a pre-plan. For people who have not heard about this or weren't willing to put their house and other assets into an irrevocable trust before they needed long-term care, now they need long-term care. So that's what we call a crisis plan. If we need to get somebody qualified for Medicaid as soon as possible. Now, this could be a person that's already in a nursing home. It could be a person that's been in a nursing home for a few years, but they still have assets left. More often, though, it's people who the families come to me and they say, we need dad to find some care for dad right away, but we're concerned about the cost. And so dad's going to be moving into an assisted living or nursing care facility in a couple of months, perhaps. It's a planning phase. But like I say, could be already there. I'm saying dad, but I should say mom, because this is the mom example. So mom's in a crisis. Mom needs nursing care, or mom's already in nursing care. What do we do with the $300,000 nest egg plus the $300,000 home? Well, if mom is moving out of the home, what we do is we liquidate the home. We have to sell it in order to maximize our savings on this, because we want to put about $325,000 into the MAPT. In this case, the MAPT is on the right-hand side. So we take that amount and we take it and put it in the MAPT. The rest of the assets of those $600,000, $275,000, we put in a specialized type of annuity. Now, this isn't just any annuity, and you have to be careful to use the right type of annuity, because most annuities will not work for this. You get them on a special market. They are Medicaid compliant annuities and have to be used in that way. Now, this is just an example. The 325 and 275 split here depends on a lot of things. So each individual would be able to save more or less depending on their situation. And it all has to be thrown into a pretty complicated calculator. So I just want to say, if you start out with 600,000, this is not an example for your family. Your family might be able to save more or might be able to save less than this 325,000. It's just an example. Okay. So what happens then when mom puts the $325,000 into the MAPT? That's a divestment, and it causes a penalty. Now, the penalty is that mom can't access Medicaid for about 38 months. Well, luckily for us, we did a calculation, and if we put $275,000 into this annuity, we can pay mom through her care for that 38 months. We've calculated it out. Now, we might need to pull some of the money out of the MAPT to make up the difference if the cost of care goes up during those 38 months, which it almost certainly will. But in the end, whatever is in that MAPT, when mom passes away, she will be on Medicaid after 38 months. The kids will be able to hold on to that $325,000 or whatever is left in that MAPT. And then when mom passes away, the kids inherit that $325,000. So in this case, we weren't able to save the $525,000 that we were able to save in the pre-planning case, but we were still able to save $325,000 out of $600,000 instead of watching it all go down the drain. This is a crisis plan. It's something that's helped out dozens of families that we've worked with so that they don't run out of everything before mom or dad passes away. Now, the key to this, I think, is not only do the kids inherit, but I think more important, the parent, mom in this case, has security, that she's not completely and totally reliant on Medicaid or the government benefits, because that's a bad situation to be in. So, as just a wrap up, and to simplify things, if you don't plan, or if you plan poorly, then the government's got a plan for you, and it might involve poverty. In fact, it does involve poverty at the end of your life. I would not want that for you. If you plan well, you may not know where you are or what date it is or who's the president of the United States, but you'll be able to afford some nice headphones and a suit and tie, and you'll be doing the jig in your nursing home. So comfortable, happy, and your family has money. That is the end of the presentation. And now I want to see, do we have any questions? Now's the time. I'd be happy to answer any questions. All right. Okay, how can you keep your home if you can't keep enough cash to pay property taxes, insurance, and maintenance? That's a good question. Family's going to have to chip in for those things if you want to keep your home. Otherwise, it'll be taken on a tax lien, unfortunately. The Medicaid program will not allow you to keep money to pay your mortgage if you're not living in the home, or property taxes, etc. So the family is going to have to chip in to keep the home if that's what you want to do. A lot of these things are dependent on whether you're single person, widowed, or whether you're a married couple. Calculations for married couples are different. In fact, if one married couple needs Medicaid and the other one doesn't, we can save pretty much everything except for sometimes we have to pay taxes and you have to pay our fee in order to help you do that. But everything else can typically be saved for the person that doesn't need the care. Do you recommend WISPAC Trust? I love WISPAC. It's a great organization. WISPAC Trust help many people who are disabled. WISPAC Trusts are statutory pooled trusts. And what that means is pooled. They take the money of many disabled people, they put it in a trust, they invest it in that trust, but everybody has a sub account within that trust. So if you're a disabled person, you can give the money to WISPAC. Once you give it to WISPAC, it's locked in. Now they will give it back to you to pay for things for your care, things that you might want or need. They could pay for, let's say, artwork for your room if you want to spruce up your room, furniture, vacations, things like that, while you still qualify for Medicaid. The issue with WISPAC Trust is you can't get the money back after you're dead. Once you pass away, that money in a WISPAC Trust goes to repay the state for your Medicaid bill. So WISPAC Trusts are great. It allows you to stay on Medicaid or get Medicaid by putting your assets in there. But once they're in there, if you don't spend them during your lifetime on supplemental needs as a disabled person, then you can't get it back or your family can't inherit. That's the downside of the WISPAC Trust. Okay, if a house is in an irrevocable trust, but sold after entry into long-term care, into a newly opened trust bank account, can Medicaid recoup money from that new account with money from the sale of the home? No, as long as it's done properly. If your house was in an irrevocable trust and then it's sold, the money then stays in the irrevocable trust. You don't transfer it out. So that money has the same protection that the house had if it's in the right kind of irrevocable trust. So even though the house is sold, it's not seen by the state or anybody else as a new gift or a new divestment. That money, just because the house is sold, does not now belong to the person again. It still belongs to the trust, so that there's no break in there so that the person has to lose it in the end. So I hope that answers that question. If you're in long-term care and your house has been in an irrevocable trust, you got to make sure that the cash from that house sale does not go in your personal bank account. Otherwise, you've broken it. And now, yes, you will have to use that money to pay for your care. But if the money from that house goes into an account that's in that trust name, you're good. Medicaid cannot recoup that, as long as the trust is properly drafted. So I want to make that caveat. When we're talking about these MAPTs, they have to be drafted in the right way so that all this works. All right. Will an irrevocable trust to grandchildren help protect us? Sure. Sure, it can. Depends on the situation. But yeah, if you want to give stuff to your grandkids after your death, but when you put it into that irrevocable trust, you need to turn over control. So this is what trips a lot of people up, is because they can't get over the mental hurdle of giving up control of the assets that they've built up over their whole life. What I like to tell them, look, it's not losing control. It is losing control as a person, but it's gaining much more control as a family, because now you can't just spend or give away all of your assets because they don't belong to you anymore. You have to count on the kids, but you control, so the state can't take them. So the state can't take them, and they don't need to be used on your care. You just widen your thoughts of control, and now you're actually gaining control instead of losing it by turning over the day-to-day control to your kids. So yes, you can do that for grandkids as well. They still got the 5-year look back period and the penalty period, etc. But you should talk with an elder law expert, somebody that does Medicaid planning, for more details on that. Can you tell us anything about the Medicaid deductible program? The Medicaid deductible program, I don't know what that is. So no, I'm sorry. The answer is no. I've not heard of the Medicaid deductible program. There may be a program out there called that, but I don't know about it. We help people get on long-term care Medicaid for elderly, blind, and disabled. EBD, elderly, blind, and disabled. Medicaid pays for nursing care. And oftentimes it's done on a waivers program, which means you can stay in your house. Some cases, if you qualify, in some cases you can get long-term care paid for in an assisted living facility on the waivers program. So you don't necessarily have to be in a full-scale nursing facility. All right, what happens if you do the pre-planning and then it turns into a crisis before the 5 years is up? Great question, Carol. So if you do some pre-planning, you put your assets into this MAPT, and then a crisis comes up. So there's many opportunities and situations and things that you might want to do, and it all depends on how long have you got until the 5 years is up. How much did you put into the MAPT? How much do you have outside of the MAPT, etc.? So we'd have to take a look at each individual case, but in some cases, we can scrape up enough to pay us until the end of the 5-year period and then apply for Medicaid after that. So everything in the MAPT is saved. Sometimes we can take some of the assets out of the MAPT to get us through the 5-year period for the rest of those assets. So that you can save some or most. And sometimes, in the rare situation, we just take everything out of the MAPT and do a crisis plan. If we started with a plan that was a pre-planning, we just have to undo it and then redo it as a crisis plan if the nursing care is needed too soon after doing the pre-planning. Okay. Yeah, I agree. It's great news that people don't hear enough. And the long-term care facilities will not tell you about these things that can be done. The county and the county service people will not tell you about these things that can be done in most cases. You need to talk to an attorney that knows this stuff inside and out. You really need to get independent advice, not advice from people who want you to pay, like the county and the nursing facility. They want you to pay out of your pocket. And why? Why do they want you to pay out of your pocket? It's not because they want you to go broke, but they get more money if you pay out of your pocket. Medicaid pays less than what you would pay. So if you're in a nursing home or assisted living facility and you're paying let's say you're paying $7,000 a month in assisted living. If then you run out of money and Medicaid starts paying, they're probably only paying about $5,000 per month. That means the facility gets less. And the reason the county wants you to pay, obviously, is because they don't want to have to pay for all of that care. All right, what about impoverished spouse protection? Yes, there is impoverished spouse protection. There are rules. So if you have a spouse and you need care, so let's say I need care, my spouse doesn't need care. What we do is we have to make sure that the spouse has what's called the spousal resource allowance. Now, the spousal resource allowance in Wisconsin is a maximum of $154,000. Now, that means you have to spend down all of your countable assets until you reach $154,000 at the max. Now, people, you could only be able to save $50,000 because that's the minimum, between 50 and 154. So the way you decide what you can save for the spouse that doesn't need care is you take half of what you start with. So let's just say you started with $200,000 in countable assets. The rules are you have to spend half of that. And as long as the number that's half of that is in between 50 and 154, then that's what you get to keep. So if you start with 200,000, you get to keep 100,000. If you start with 70,000, half of that is 35, but 35 is less than 50, so you get to keep the 50,000, which is the lower limit. If you start with 310,000, now you get to keep 154 because that's more than double of 154,000. If you have 600,000 when you start, the spouse is allowed to keep 154 only. Unless, of course, you go to somebody that knows the rules really well and you can keep more. In fact, you can keep it all, except sometimes we'll have to cash in IRAs, which causes sometimes a large tax bill, but we can save the assets once the IRA is cashed in. And it all depends on the assets. All right, let's see. So that's the impoverished spouse protection. Oh, also the impoverished spouse gets another protection, and that is protection of their income. So the spouse that doesn't need the care, the well spouse, let's call them, gets to have at least $3,200 in income, because all of the income for the spouse that needs care has to go for their care, and then Medicaid makes up the difference. Now, if that's going to cause the spouse that's at home to have less than $3,200 a month in income, then at that point they can take some of the income from the other spouse to make it up to $3,200 per month. So there is some protection against really low income for the well spouse too. All right. Can you tell us the approximate charge for setting up an MAPT? Now, if you're doing pre-planning, we do MAPTs as part of pre-planning comprehensive estate plan. So that means you're going to be doing your powers of attorney, which are so essential to anybody that thinks, anybody that's over the age of 18, really. You need to have this in case you become incapacitated or need long-term care, and you want to be able to maximize the savings on here. So if you're doing estate planning, you want to come to us and do this, it's going to be about $3,000 above whatever the basic estate plan is to set up the MAPT and get a piece of real estate in there. So we want to get your house in there or your land up north or whatever it is. And then whatever the cost of your estate plan is also added on there. So the total cost can be $6,000 or more. But in the end, is it worth it to save your house? Is it worth it to have that security so that the house and your cabin or maybe some of your cash is saved? Each person will be quoted a fee. So I don't know what your situation is. It's really hard to tell, but it's not inexpensive. There is a fairly high cost here, but the value far outweighs the cost in this case, especially to have somebody that knows what they're doing putting this together for you. All right, let's see. Impoverished spouse. Does that include the house? Yeah, your house can be protected. One thing to be careful about is some banks get upset when you put a mortgaged house into an MAPT. Now, most of the times they never even know that you've done it. I've never, knock on wood, had a bank call the mortgage due, but it's something that we have to be cautious about. But yes, put your house in MAPT if you can. Especially if you don't think you're going to want to move from there. Because even if you do want to undo it all, you've got that choice as long as your kids cooperate, because they're going to be the ones with the legal authority to do stuff. Okay. Yes. So the cost of long-term care is devastating to many families. Thousands of families every year take care of the death of their loved ones, and there's no money to pay for a funeral. There's no money to give to the kids. There's not even enough money to put on a luncheon, a celebration of life. It's sad. It's the government's plan, and I don't want that to be the plan for you. The cost of setting this up is not minimal, but compared to the risks on the other side, many of my clients have found that it's been a lifesaver, quite literally. I've been told that this has saved lives by doing this type of planning, because when the kids were able to inherit from the mom instead of not being able to inherit anything, one of them, who was just stressing themselves out and was probably headed for a heart attack, was able to retire with mom's inheritance, and told us saved their life. Okay, so there's a question about converting a revocable to an irrevocable trust. You could do an irrevocable trust. I would not generally recommend that you convert a revocable to an irrevocable, because the revocable trust has all the assets that you can control during during any lifetime. You can write checks on it, you can give it away, you can spend it however you want, and you don't want to put everything into an irrevocable trust. So if you remember Dad's plan, where Dad kept $75,000 out and put the rest into the irrevocable trust, that's about what I would recommend. Do not convert a revocable into an irrevocable, especially if your income is going into an account that's in an irrevocable trust. Bad idea, because you got to pay for groceries, etc. And if you're using that irrevocable trust just like it's your money, then the state will ping you on that. They'll say you're cheating. It's not really an irrevocable trust, and it falls apart. So you just have to be really careful. If you have a revocable trust, I would recommend adding an irrevocable trust to that plan. You can have both. One of them you control, one of them the kids control. Now, the ones that the kids control, of course, that's the vault. That's the protection trust. Also, just another thing, something that many people don't realize is that if you don't have children or other relatives that you can inherently trust, completely trust, that they're not going to, kick you out of your house. They're not going to take all of the assets that you put in this trust to try to save it and just gamble it away. If you have people that you don't trust, do not do this. You really have to have people that you trust, and it really needs to almost be a family member, friends, acquaintances, etc. Not a close enough tie really to make sure that through your whole lifetime they're going to be around and that they're going to care about you. Okay. Great. So, did I get all the questions? Oh, right. So the 154,000 for the impoverished spouse, that doesn't include the house, right? The spouse gets the house and a car and $154,000. The house and the car are exempted, so you don't count those. 154,000 is countable assets, so bank accounts and other things like that. Oh, also in Wisconsin, which is different in Illinois and Michigan and Minnesota. Wisconsin spouses, the well spouse gets to keep their IRA without counting it. So if you have an IRA or a 401k or another qualified retirement account, it has to be one of those things that's called an IRA or a 401k or a 403b. You don't have to count it, and you don't have to spend it on your spouse's care. But the spouse that needs care has to spend their IRA. That's all countable. The spouse that does not need care, their IRAs can be exempted. Nice little rule, protective of Wisconsin people. Other states aren't as generous about that. Okay. Thanks very much. I really do appreciate you coming on. I hope that if you have any of these concerns, that you will make an appointment, come and discuss it. We'll talk about your situation. We'll get some information about you, and we'll do some brainstorming. At the end, we'll make a recommendation. Maybe you should do something, maybe you shouldn't. If we think that you should, we'll give you a price for that, and you can decide whether you want to move forward. I really do enjoy doing these. I hope that you've also enjoyed it and learned a little bit of something. And I will close this out right now. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you again on another one of these.